Hey there friends, welcome to Stab and Stitch, where every week I sit down with a project I've been working on and tell you a true crime story. If you're a maker, grab your project and knit or crochet or whatever it is you do right along with me, and we'll have a good time. If you're new here, hi, I'm Emily. I'm from DIY My Way over on Instagram. You should check me out if you don't follow me yet. And you should totally hit that subscribe button because we do this every Friday for your weekend whips. If you're not a maker and you don't know what that is, it's WIPS. It means work in progress. Today, I am working on a Christmas sweater. Oh, I'm so excited for this. It's a test for Kara from KP Crochet Designs. It's gonna be fabulous. I'm also wearing crochet. It's just a crochet kind of day for me. But this is the October Skies vest from Justina from LadyJayCrochet. I'm gonna link this in the description box, and then I will update the description box once this pattern launches. It's not live yet. It's still in testing, obviously, because I'm still testing it. All right, so let's jump right into this week's story because let me tell you, this one's a doozy. And yes, I have been talking in a funny Southern accent and using words like doozy all day while I've been getting ready for this. You're welcome in advance. All right, so it was 1999, and Tracie Hawlitt and J.B. Beasley were 17 years old. They were both living in Dothan, Alabama. I'm so sorry. Ignore me. But they were living in Dothan, Alabama, and they were best friends. The two girls were in the summer between their junior and senior year of high school, and on the evening of July 31st, 1999, they were getting ready. On the evening of July 31st, 1999, they were getting ready to go celebrate Tracie's 17th birthday party, which, if you remember being in high school, or if you're in high school, like, that's just such a big year, and you're the seniors, you're ruling the school, you're just like, you can drive, you can do things. Life honestly was great. So they're having this party in JB's honor, and it's gonna be in a field about 10 miles north of town. So this, from what it looks like, is kind of a farm area, so having a party in a field was normal, especially at the time. And JB and Tracie were getting ready to go to this party together. They were gonna ride together, come back home together, just best friend things, you know? So the two girls leave the house around 10:05 p.m. to head up to the party. Unfortunately, they never actually made it to the party. 1999, as some of us may remember, was before GPSs existed. So when Tracie and JB got lost, they got like lost. They ended up in a town called Ozark. And Ozark was about 20 miles away from where they live. If you look at it on a map, like where they were heading was straight north of town. They ended up northwest of town. So they're like over here and like pretty far out. They stopped at a gas station in Ozark because they were lost. They were almost out of gas. They were hoping to be able to ask for directions. So they get out, they fill up the car, they walk up to the store, and unfortunately, the gas station store had closed at 11 o'clock. It was around 11:30 at the time. So they're filling up the car, and as they're doing this, another car stops. And it's a woman named Miss Merritt and her daughter. And so the girls talk to Miss Merritt and her daughter, and luckily, Miss Merritt is able to give them directions. So they're like, okay, this is great. Tracie calls her mother from the gas station payphone, because this was also pre-cell phones. We love 1999, guys. But she calls her mother, and when she talks to her mother on the phone, she says, she explains what's going on. And her mother would say later that everything seemed fine. You know, it was normal Tracie. She knew her daughter very well. They were very close. Nothing seemed off at all. Miss Merritt would say the same thing later. She said, you know, it was just two teenage girls that got lost. She also said that she gave them directions. Tracie called her mother, and then she actually watched them pull out of the gas station and turn the right direction to head towards the highway, and that it was pretty much a straight shot. Like, they shouldn't have missed it. And that was the last time Miss Merritt saw JB and Tracie. It is believed that Miss Merritt was the last person, or Miss Merritt and her daughter were the last people, to see Tracie and JB alive. The next morning, around 8 a.m., Tracie and JB were reported missing. Right around that same time, the cops discovered their car, or the car they were driving. I believe it was JB's car. It was parked on the side of the road on Herring Avenue, which was the road that they had turned out of the gas station onto. It was found actually less than a mile away from the gas station that they had filled up at and spoken with Miss Merritt at. So they were still in Ozark at the time. It was also less than a mile away from the payphone, of course. The car, it wasn't damaged. There was no sign of them having been run off the road. There was no, the windows weren't broken. It was totally fine. The doors were unlocked. The driver's side window was rolled down just slightly, about that much, give or take. And nothing really seemed amiss about it, other than the fact that it was very muddy. It looked like it had been driven through the mud, and it was almost out of gas. Now, if you remember, the girls had stopped at the gas station and filled up the car with gas. So it should have been almost full if they had stopped less than a mile away from the gas station, right? So clearly this wasn't immediately after they left that this happened. Investigators would also say that they don't know why the girls stopped. There was no sign of them having been run off the road or anything like that, and that is still a mystery as to why they stopped. They start to investigate the car and find that there are no obvious signs of a robbery either. The girls' purses and wallets are in the car. It was interesting, so JB's driver's license was found sitting on the dashboard of the car. And to me that was interesting because I'm thinking, did they think they were getting pulled over? Is that why they stopped? Because it seems like, maybe something had happened where she got her driver's license out, license and registration, and was getting ready to talk to a police officer, and then it wasn't? I don't know. That seemed fishy to me. They even found jewelry in the car still, which some people thought was weird. For me personally, I don't know about you, but I have at least 3 pairs of earrings in my car at any given time, because if I'm on my way somewhere, I'm probably going to decide I want to wear earrings. Or decide that I don't want to wear my earrings. So, I have jewelry in my car. Maybe they did too. The only thing that was missing out of the car, at all, was the keychain with the car keys and JB's house key on it. That was it. Everything else that their parents expected to be there, that investigators would expect to be there, was there. Which was very, very strange. It was like the 2 girls had just disappeared. So the search begins, right? The 2 girls are considered missing. They're searching the surrounding areas. They're just everywhere. And as they typically do when they're doing a search and they've found a car, they left an officer with the vehicle to wait for the tow truck to come. And that's important because all of this happens around 8 a.m. and they're investigating and all of that. So about 6 hours later, it's about 2 p.m. now at this point, 2 p.m. in August in Alabama. It's probably pretty hot. The investigator that's left with the cars, he's just kind of looking around and discovers that this car has a latch that you can pop the trunk. Now that's standard today, but it wasn't back then. Back then you would need the car keys to get into the trunk. So they hadn't been able to search the trunk yet. So this investigator pops the trunk, and that's when he finds JB and Tracie. They both had been shot in the head once, execution style, as the report described it, and they had been killed. So at this point, the search stops and the homicide investigation starts. Now, something that I did want to point out, because as I was reading this, no comment was made about the smell. And I'm thinking, it's Alabama in August. How did he not smell something, right? You're standing there with the car. I have some questions. So they've found the bodies. And when they found them, both girls were fully clothed. Tracie had a single shot to her temple, so like right here, and a large scratch on her arm. There were described to be briars on her pants, and her brand new New Balance shoes that she was wearing for the party that night were completely covered in mud. It was also noted that her pants were wet to just below her knees. JB had also been shot. She had been shot in the cheek, and the report described her as, quote, noticeably dirty. So take that to mean what you will. It said there was mud on her shoes, on her clothing, and her pants were also wet to just below the knee. The girls had both been shot with a 9mm gun, and there was a bullet casing from one of the shots, presumably, but that matched the gun that they had been shot with, that was balanced on Tracie's thigh. It was quickly confirmed that the two girls were not actually killed in the place where the car was found parked. They were also not killed in the trunk of the car. So someone had killed them and then put them into the car, drove it to this spot, and left it there for it to be presumably found. They took them to the medical examiner and did autopsies, which confirmed that neither girl had been raped. They also did not find any traces of drugs or alcohol in either girl's system. And like I said, they were able to confirm definitively that the girls had not been killed in the car or in the positions that they were found in. However, 2 months later, one of the crime labs came back and reported that they had found traces of semen on JB's bra, panties, and skin. But they didn't find it, or in the report it didn't say that they found it on her shirt or pants. It was just on her bra and her panties, which to me seems very fishy, because I'm thinking, so at some point her clothes were off and then put back on. Maybe that's why she was noticeably dirty, because her clothes were taken off and thrown somewhere and then put back onto her. Whether she put them back on or somebody put them back on, I don't know, but maybe. I also had a really hard time finding pictures of this. It was a really big case in the area, but it's kind of a small town, and so this didn't actually make national news at the time. So it was hard to find that type of information on it. So at this point, there's really not a whole lot of leads, but police start to investigate and go through all of the avenues that they would typically go through. And exactly 1 month later, on September 1st, 1999, a local man came forward with a very strange story. But let's start from, we'll tell you about him first. So his name was Johnny Barentine, or Barentine? Johnny. We're going to call him Johnny. He lived in Ozark at the time, and he actually lived less than a mile away from the gas station and the spot where the car was found. So he lived super close. And on that night, July 31st, he left his house around 11:30 p.m., which coincidentally was the same time that the girls were at the gas station with Miss Merritt and that Tracie had called her mother, coincidentally. But he left his house around 11:30 p.m. to go and get some milk for his 2-year-old son. However, his wife would later say that he didn't come home until 1 o'clock in the morning from doing this, and that when he got home, he was really shaken up. So he tells his wife that his car had been hit by, quote, a big black truck with Dothan tags on it. And this is before the murders are even discovered. So this is the same night. So after that night, Johnny's friends would say that he just went around telling anyone who would listen that this had happened, and that he thought he knew who had killed the girls. And so, of course they're all saying, you should go to the police if you know something. Like, this is this huge murder. Everybody's freaked out. Like, go tell them what you know or what you saw or about this big black truck. And so finally, September 1st, he goes in and talks to the police. According to the police chief in Ozark, Chief Tony Spivey, Barentine initially said that on that night, he saw a big black truck speeding away from the area where the girls had been found. As the interview continued, he goes on to describe a man with tattoos all over his arms that he saw in the area, and that he had actually picked up and driven to the gas station, and that this man was related to the big black truck in some way. He went on to continue just telling various stories. He actually told 6 different versions of his story, if you're counting. But so he said he had picked up this man with tattoos all over him that he didn't know, and he took them to the Big and Little store. Johnny then says that when he gets there with this man, the girls are still there, even though Miss Merritt's story had said that they had already left the Big and Little store, or this gas station, that's what it was. But that the man got into the car with the 2 girls and had Johnny follow him. And that Johnny, he did describe these girls and said that they were, quote, the dead girls. But so he said they'd ended up on Herring Avenue, that the man got the girls out of the car, that Johnny had heard 2 gunshots, and then the man came and got back into his car and had him drop him off outside of town. And that Johnny had done this and then gone home. Later, while talking to the police, Johnny confessed to the investigators that the man he'd picked up and given this ride to was his neighbor. And, they both lived less than a mile away from this. So, at this point, the police arrest him. They named him as the prime suspect. They actually charged him with 2 counts of capital murder. And they're like, this is clearly our guy. Like, you have somebody telling this many versions of a story. He's obviously lying about something. And it seems pretty clear that he knows some details of this crime. So there's a couple of issues with Johnny's story, other than the fact that he told 6 of them. So the first issue is that in all of these versions of the story, he never mentions the sexual activity. He never mentions a situation where the car could have gotten muddy or the girls could have gotten muddy. And the neighbor that he implicated in a couple of versions of the story had a very strong alibi for the night. Once they find this semen, which happened 2 months after, so it's, between all of these times, but it's before he goes before the jury, they find it, and they do DNA testing for both Johnny and his neighbor, and neither of them were a match. So at this point, police are just very confused. Like, it doesn't seem like this guy's the guy. There's no evidence connecting him to the crime. He's basically just telling them some imaginations that go with the story he's seen in the newspaper. But he does go before the grand jury, and as soon as he gets up in front of the grand jury, his story becomes, well, I didn't see anything. And that he had made up the whole thing to get the reward money. The sheriff said, he said he was there. He told us all of this information about the girls and putting them in the trunk. He said that one of the girls ran, that they were both, combative, like all of these different things. But Johnny would later say, and his attorney would argue, that he was tricked into telling this story. That it was a very high-pressure 4-hour-long police interview that went from, Johnny telling them what he knew to police accusing him to them suggesting that he might have done it, which is where this neighbor or other character came from. It also was reported in a couple of different sources, but not all of them that I saw. But in these sources, and also apparently it was said in a hearing, that Johnny did have a mental disability, that he had not actually finished the 8th grade. And that he was in special education classes when he was in school. So his attorney's argument was that Johnny, he wasn't able to hold up to the pressure of that interview and would just say anything basically to end the interview. He ended up not being indicted. The grand jury decided, we don't have enough evidence to charge this guy. It really seems like he wasn't involved. And so he's released. He spent about a month and a half in jail. And he was sent home. Now, I'm sure it wasn't easy because the papers had all reported that, he was arrested and he did it. But he's sent home and remains a suspect. The police are still, they're keeping an eye on him. They think he might have done it. And they continue to investigate. But unfortunately, the case goes cold at this point. There's just really not a whole lot of information. They followed a few leads. This reward money was huge. They had tips, but nothing ever went anywhere. So 19 years after Tracie and J.B. were killed, it's August of 2018, And the police in Ozark are doing their annual cold case investigation, which is pretty standard for police departments to do. Like once a year, they'll go through cold cases. And they come upon this case, and they had seen recently that the Golden State Killer case was solved using DNA evidence in this new method that had been developed by Paraben Labs in Virginia. So they're like, all right, it's worth a shot. Like, this is an old case. We'd really like to get this solved and get some peace and justice for the families. And plus, this was a pretty violent killing. And this killer is still on the loose, presumably in their town, or potentially in their town, right? So they send a sample of DNA off to the labs. And Paraben Labs is using this new technique. It's called genetic genealogy. If you haven't heard of it, basically what it does is it allows them to find potential matches for unknown samples of DNA by using traditional genealogy, or like family tree roots things, with known samples of DNA. So they're looking at the DNA, finding matches, and they're able to match the DNA sample to a region, to things like race, different like nationality components the individual would have. Maybe they can find, you and this other sample, or the unknown sample and this other sample have mutual ancestors, and you can trace that down. And within the family tree, they can identify, hey, like there's these 5 people that it could be, or these like 25, or however many it may be, right? So they do this, and it takes a long time. There's a lot of research that goes into this. And now, fun fact, genetic genealogy is actually the same thing that a lot of the like find your roots sites use, like the 23andMe's and those types of things where you like swab and send it in. Like, that's how genetic genealogy works, is because, they trace back and they're like, oh, these are your ancestors and these are people you may be related to. Well, they also use that database to solve crimes. Fun fact. Yeah, it's lovely, right? I have opinions about it. But if you have opinions about it, I would love to hear it in the comments. Because personally, like, I don't necessarily know how I feel about them just creating a database of everybody's DNA. But also, if it helps solve murders, I'm for it. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so it takes them 8 months to work on this. Or 7 months? 7 months. Because in March of 2019, they send a list of potential people back to the Ozark police. And as they're looking at the list, they go through and they're like, hey, we recognize that name. This guy actually lives around here. And he was the only individual on the list that was actually like living in the area. And it was a man by the name of Coley McCraney. Coley McCraney was originally from Ozark and currently lives in Dothan. So very local, had never left the area. He'd never been on the police's radar. He had a very clean record. People would say, he's a part of the community, a family man. There were some reports that said he was actually a pastor, but I couldn't find what church he was a pastor of. I searched through like local church websites, and there was nothing there. But he had a military background. He was known in some circles as, quote, a man of God, just all around good guy. He was an African-American man, and he was about 44 at the time. So he would have been about 5 or 6 years older he would have been like 24 when it happened, right? So young guy when it happened. There's also no indication at all that Coley McCraney knew either of the girls before the crime happened. But he's the only person that matched the list that was in the area, so they start with him. And the police go out and they bring him in for questioning, and he agrees to give a sample of his DNA. And lo and behold, it's a match. Like a perfect match. And that's the thing about genetic genealogy. So genetic genealogy will get you close, but then you have to use traditional DNA matching to confirm. And this confirmed it. So Coley McCraney is placed under arrest. His trial was set for November 16th of 2020. So this week, if you're watching this as it's happening, but like very much like right now. But he's been in jail since March of 2019, and his lawyers earlier this year petitioned for a delay of trial, given that there's this thing called the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know if you've heard of it. That's happening right now, and it limited their ability to examine evidence, question witnesses, basically like to build a case. So the trial was pushed back and will now happen in 2021. I believe there are some things that like they still haven't been able to do, so they haven't set a date for the trial yet, but it will happen in 2021. So what do you think of this case? Do you think that Coley McCraney did it? I mean, obviously he hasn't been tried yet, but it's hard to prove DNA evidence wrong. And part of me thinks that like maybe they have found other evidence that would link him to the crime, or they've been able to tie him to something else. Maybe the gun? I really don't know. It's wild to me, and there's a lot of cases that are being solved in this way, but this one, it feels especially brutal. Just the way that they were killed, the fact that like it seems like they were dragged out or like made to walk out somewhere and then like brought back and killed because they didn't fall into the mud. I don't know. It gives me the heebie-jeebies, honestly. And as a young woman, like the fact that a man that you've never met before could just murder you out of your car with your friend? Ugh. I don't know. So tell me what you think. Do you have any theories? I'm super interested to hear your thoughts on this one. And we'll all have to watch this trial together next year. Maybe I'll do another video and update you after the trial happens with like what the final answer is, if there's a final answer. I don't know. But if you made it this far, go ahead and give it a like if you liked it, or tell me that you didn't like it. That's fine too. You don't have to like it. It's a murder story. But make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, and check out some of my other videos. We do this every week. I will be doing a video next Friday. So make sure you tune in for that, and have a good Thanksgiving if you're in the US, or just a good week if you're not in the US. All right.